My wife secretly sold our family home for $350, $0, then lied about the proceeds while I discovered she was cheating with her boss. Now she's claiming I owe her half the money in a bitter courtroom battle. I never thought I'd be writing something like this, but here I am. You know how sometimes you sense something off, but you brush it aside because, well, you want to believe the best. That was me with Lisa. We've been married for 8 years, and honestly, I thought we had a pretty good thing going: 2 kids, a nice house, steady jobs. But then out of nowhere, everything started unraveling. The signs I ignored, the little things I brushed off, they all added up to something much darker. And the most shocking part, the night I found out she'd secretly sold our family home for over 300 grand, lied about the money, and was cheating on me with her boss, Mark. It all started about 3 weeks ago. I'd been noticing Lisa acting strangely, her phone constantly in her hand, locking her screen when I'd walk into the room, canceling plans last minute, and always being secretive about where she was going. She'd say she was meeting friends or going shopping, but I caught her sneaking calls late at night, whispering, laughing in ways I'd never seen before. Still, I didn't want to jump to conclusions. Maybe she was just stressed at work or dealing with something personal. Then one afternoon I came home early from work. I wanted to surprise her, maybe take her out for dinner. I opened the door and immediately noticed her car wasn't in the driveway. That was odd. Usually she was home by then. I looked around and found her purse on the kitchen counter, but her phone was missing. As I was about to call her, I saw a text pop up on her laptop screen, something about meeting Mark tonight and a time. My stomach clenched. I knew who Mark was, her boss. I'd heard her talk about him as just a work acquaintance, but now I was pretty sure there was more to it. I waited, trying to stay calm, but I couldn't. I called her and she answered after a few rings. Her voice sounded normal, cheerful even. I asked where she was. She said she was at her sister's house, but I knew she was. I pressed her and she hesitated, then finally snapped at me, saying I was paranoid, that I was imagining things. But I was. I knew something was wrong. I decided to do a little digging. That night I went through her emails and texts, and there it was, more than I expected. She'd been telling Mark she loved him, that she wanted to be with him, that she was tired of hiding it. I found hotel receipts, messages about secret meetings, and even photos of them together at a fancy restaurant downtown. I couldn't believe it. My wife, the woman I trusted with everything, was cheating on me with her boss, someone I thought was just a professional acquaintance. It felt like my world was crashing down. But what really hit me harder than the affair? The fact that she had been hiding something much bigger, something that made me question everything about our marriage. That's when I found out she'd secretly sold our house. Not just that, but she'd cashed out the equity, around $350, $0, and lied about what she did with the money. She told me she'd used it to pay off debts, to invest, to fund her personal growth. But I found bank statements and emails that made it clear she'd kept most of it, and the rest she'd used to buy herself a new apartment downtown, one she kept hidden from me. I was stunned. How could she do this? How could she sell our home, our family's future, without telling me? And the worst part, she was acting like I was the one in the wrong, claiming I owed her half of the money because, supposedly, I was entitled to it. That's when I realized this wasn't just a betrayal of trust. It was theft, deception, and manipulation all rolled into one. I felt a mix of rage, heartbreak, and confusion. I didn't sleep that night. I kept thinking about everything: the house, the kids, the years I spent building this life. All gone just like that, sold off behind my back. The lies kept piling up, and I knew I had to confront her. But I also knew this was just the beginning. The emotional blow was immense, but I could see the storm ahead: legal battles, custody disputes, and trying to rebuild my life from the wreckage she'd left behind. The next morning, I woke up feeling like I'd been hit by a truck. My mind was racing, replaying everything I'd uncovered the night before. I knew I couldn't just let this slide, not without getting some answers first. I needed to confront Lisa, get her to tell me the truth, or at least enough to understand what the hell was going on. But I also knew I had to be careful. She was a master manipulator and could spin anything in her favor. I waited until she left for her work meeting, which I now suspected was a cover for her secret rendezvous with Mark. I decided to go to her computer just to see if I could find more evidence. I pulled up her email account, her messages, her bank statements, and there it was, more lies. She transferred large sums of money to her personal account, claiming it was for emergencies, but I knew better. She'd been draining the house's equity, hiding the cash, and spending it on her new apartment, designer clothes, and who knows what else. I found a folder labeled important that contained scanned documents, her signature on the deed of the house, the sale contract, and a note she'd written to herself. Keep him from finding out the truth. Use the money wisely. That was the moment I realized how deep her deception ran. She had planned this for months, maybe longer. All the while I was clueless, working my ass off, thinking everything was fine. I closed her laptop and took a deep breath. I knew I had to face her. This was no longer just about the affair. It was about betrayal on a scale I'd never imagined. I waited until she came home, trying to keep my cool. When she walked through the door, I looked her straight in the eyes and told her I knew everything. I laid out the evidence, the messages, the bank transfers, the sale of the house. Her face turned pale, then flushed with anger. She started with her usual lies. You're overreacting. It's none of your business. I did all this for us. But I cut her off. I told her I wasn't stupid, that I knew she'd been cheating, that she'd lied about the money, and that I had all the proof. Her eyes flickered with that bitchy, defensive glare she always wore when she was cornered. She tried to deny everything. But I wasn't having it. I told her I wanted the truth and I wanted her out of my house. She snapped, saying I was controlling and paranoid. She accused me of not trusting her, of being jealous. She claimed she'd been stressed, that it was a mistake, that Mark was just a friend. But I knew better. I knew this was more than just an affair. It was a full-blown betrayal of everything we had. I told her I was done listening to her lies, that I was contacting a lawyer, and that I was taking back what was mine. The confrontation didn't end there. She started crying, saying I was ruining our family, that I owed her half the money because I was entitled to it, that she'd sacrificed so much for us. I couldn't believe the audacity. She had sold our house, lied about it, and now she's claiming I owe her. That was the last straw. I told her she could keep her lies and her money. She wasn't getting away with this. I was going to fight for everything that was rightfully mine and for my kids' future. That day marked the beginning of the fallout. I contacted a lawyer, gathered all the evidence, and prepared for what was coming. I was furious, hurt, and feeling like I'd been punched in the gut. But I also felt a strange sense of clarity. I'd been blind for too long, trusting her blindly. Now I was finally seeing her for what she truly was, a manipulative, selfish woman who had destroyed what we built together. The emotional toll was heavy. I kept asking myself how Lisa could do this, how she could sell our home, lie about the money, and betray me so completely. It was a nightmare I couldn't wake up from, but I knew I had to keep going, for me and for my kids. I couldn't let her get away with it, not without a fight. I was ready to take her to court, to get justice, and to rebuild my life from the ruins she'd left behind. After the confrontation, everything moved at lightning speed. I hired a lawyer immediately, someone who specialized in family law and financial disputes. I gave her every piece of evidence I had: screenshots, bank statements, emails, even the sale contract of the house. I wanted to make sure she understood I wasn't backing down. Lisa, of course, started spinning her usual web of lies. She claimed she'd only sold the house to pay off debts, that she'd been forced into it because I was controlling, and that the money was for our future. Yeah, right. That was a load of BS. Meanwhile, she continued to deny everything about Mark. She insisted they just had a fling, that she was sorry, and that I was overreacting. But I knew better. I had seen the messages, the hotel receipts, the photos. She was in deep with her boss, and she'd been lying to me from the start. I was furious, but I also felt a strange sense of relief. Now I knew the truth. It was a bitter pill, but at least I had clarity. The legal process was Lisa filed a counterclaim, claiming I owed her half of the sale proceeds because, according to her, I had contributed to the house during our marriage. She argued that I was entitled to part of the money, even though I had no idea about the sale until I found the evidence. She also started making excuses for her cheating, saying she was stressed, depressed, and that Mark was just a supportive friend. That was the moment I realized how deep her manipulation went. She was good at twisting the truth, turning herself into the victim. During this time, I also learned that she'd been secretly transferring chunks of money into her personal accounts, more than I initially thought. She hidden the sale of the house from me, lied about her whereabouts, and kept the proceeds for herself. I started to see a pattern. She was a master at hiding things, at playing innocent when she was really the one screwing everything up. The emotional toll was intense. I felt betrayed, angry, and deeply hurt. I'd trusted her for so long. I'd believed in our marriage, in us. And now it felt like she'd been living a double life, one I never knew about until it was almost too late. Sometimes I'd lie awake, thinking about the house, the kids, the life we'd built, shattered in a matter of weeks. I kept asking myself how I hadn't seen the signs earlier, how I'd been so blind to her lies. But I also knew I had to stay strong. I couldn't let her manipulate me anymore. I decided I'd fight for full custody of the kids, knowing she'd try to use the situation to turn them against me. I wanted to protect them from her lies and her selfishness. I also started working on my own plan, how to reclaim what was rightfully mine and how to come out of this mess with some dignity left. The courtroom hearings came fast. Lisa was trying to argue that she deserved half of the sale proceeds because we were married, and that I was trying to cheat her out of her rightful share. She kept crying, acting like the victim, while I sat there feeling numb. I knew her game, and I wasn't going to let her manipulate the judge. I had the evidence, and I was ready to fight for what was mine. The judge ordered her to produce all documents related to the sale and all transfers of money. I was relieved. At least I had some legal backing now. The hardest part was seeing her in court, acting so bitchy and entitled, throwing tantrums and trying to paint herself as the victim. I felt a mix of disgust and pity. She had lied, cheated, and stolen from me, and now she was trying to turn it around on me. I kept my composure, though. I knew I had to be the bigger person, even if inside I was boiling with rage. As I sat there listening to her testify, I realized I was done with her lies. I was done with the betrayal. I had to focus on rebuilding my life, protecting my kids, and making sure she didn't get away with everything. The road ahead was uncertain, but I knew one thing for sure. I was not going to let her destroy me completely. I was determined to fight for my rights, for my dignity, and for the truth. The court dates kept coming faster than I expected, and every session felt like a punch to the gut. Lisa was there, looking as bitchy and entitled as ever, trying to spin her stories. She insisted she had done everything for us, claiming that I was a controlling asshole who never appreciated her sacrifices. She even had the nerve to cry about losing everything and how her life was ruined because I dared to question her. Honestly, I was too numb to be mad at her anymore. I just wanted it all over with, to get some clarity and move on. Meanwhile, I kept gathering evidence, more emails, bank statements, witness testimonies from friends who knew about her affair and her secret sale of the house. I also hired a private investigator to track her transfers and confirm what I already suspected. She'd hidden a significant chunk of the sale money in offshore accounts and new bank accounts she'd opened without telling me. She'd been lying to everyone, including her closest friends, saying the house was still ours when she'd already sold it months ago. One of the most shocking revelations came during the deposition when her lawyer tried to argue that I was trying to cheat her out of her rightful half because I wanted to keep all the money. I couldn't believe she was still playing the victim, even now. I told the court about the sale, the hidden accounts, and her lies. I laid out everything I had, including the proof she'd been hiding the money and the fact that she'd lied about her whereabouts, her affair, and her intentions from the beginning. The judge seemed to be taking all this seriously. She ordered Lisa to produce all documents related to the house sale, bank transfers, and any assets she'd hidden. The courtroom was tense, but I could see the wheels turning in the judge's mind. I knew I had a strong case, more than enough to prove that Lisa had schemed behind my back, lied, and cheated her way into a fortune she thought she could walk away with. The emotional toll was brutal. I was exhausted, mentally, physically, emotionally. I'd been betrayed not just by Lisa's infidelity but by her greed and deception. I kept replaying the moment I found her messages with Mark, her lies about the house, her manipulative tears in court. It all felt like a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. I wondered how I'd ever trust again, how I'd rebuild my life after this level of betrayal. But at the same time, I knew I had to stay strong for my kids, for myself. I couldn't let her win. I had to fight for full custody, for the house, for the money that was rightfully mine. I also started planning how I'd handle the aftermath, how to tell the kids, how to move forward without her dragging me down. I realized I'd been living in her shadow for too long, and now it was time to take control. I had to be the one to rebuild, to start fresh, even if that meant going through hell first. Then came the day of the final hearing. I sat there, feeling a mixture of hope and dread. Lisa was there, looking angry and bitchy as ever. Her lawyer tried one last time to argue that I was trying to cheat her, that I was a bad husband, and that she deserved half of everything. But I had the evidence, I had the truth, and I had my resolve. The judge listened carefully, then made her ruling. She ordered Lisa to return the sale proceeds, pay back the hidden money, and awarded me full custody of the kids. She also ordered Lisa to pay me damages for breach of fiduciary duty and fraud. Hearing that was a huge relief, but it also left me feeling hollow. I knew this wasn't the end. There would be more fallout, more legal battles, and probably some bitter fights ahead. But for now, I felt a small victory. I had stood my ground, fought for what was rightfully mine, and finally I could breathe a little easier. As I walked out of the courtroom, I looked at Lisa, her bitchy smirk replaced by a look of defeat. I felt a strange mix of anger and relief. I'd lost my trust, my marriage, and a lot of my sense of security. But I'd gained clarity, strength, and the knowledge that I could survive this. I knew I'd have to rebuild from the ashes, but I was ready. I'd learned that betrayal cuts deep, but it also shows you who you really are: resilient, capable, and determined to move forward, no matter how tough the road gets. The aftermath of the court's decision was a whirlwind I wasn't fully prepared for, but I knew I had to face it head on. Lisa, of course, didn't take the loss well. She threw a fit in the courtroom, screaming about how unfair everything was, how she'd been wronged, and how I was just a terrible husband who never appreciated her. She looked at me with pure venom in her eyes, as if I was the one who ruined her life. Honestly, I felt nothing but numbness. All I could think about was the fact that her lies had finally been exposed, and she'd been held accountable, at least legally. In the days that followed, I started the slow process of reclaiming my life. I moved out of the house, which was a gut punch all on its own. I'd spent years making that place a home, and now I had to leave it behind because she'd sold it behind my back. I took what I could: some clothes, a few personal items, and most importantly, the legal documents proving her betrayal. I couldn't bear to stay there knowing she'd betrayed everything we'd built. The kids were confused and upset. Lisa tried to manipulate them, spinning tales about how Daddy was trying to take everything, and how she was the real victim. But I made sure to be honest with them. I told them that Mommy made some mistakes, that she lied and hid things from us, but that I loved them and would always be there for them. I kept the blame away from them, knowing they were too young to understand the full extent of what had happened. Still, it hurt to see their innocent faces clouded with worry and confusion. I also started the process of rebuilding my financial stability. The court ordered Lisa to return the sale proceeds, which was a relief. I worked with my lawyer to secure a fair division of assets and to ensure she paid back the money she'd hidden. I also began to look for a new place to live, something affordable but decent enough to give the kids stability. It wasn't easy. I had to cut back on a lot, tighten my belt, and rebuild my savings. But I was determined to give my kids a fresh start, free from her lies and manipulation. Emotionally, I was a mess. I felt betrayed, angry, and at times hopeless. The trust I once had in my marriage was shattered. Every day, I fought the urge to spiral into despair, reminding myself that I had survived worse. I kept thinking about all the things she'd lied about: her affair, the sale of our house, the hidden money, and it made me sick. How could someone I loved do this to me? How could she turn our marriage into a game for her own greed and selfishness? One thing that helped was talking to friends and family. I needed people who believed in me, who could remind me that I wasn't the crazy one. Some of her friends knew about her affair, but they kept quiet out of loyalty. I didn't blame them. I just wanted to focus on healing. I also started therapy, which was a huge help. It was the first time I allowed myself to really feel the pain, the anger, and the grief. I realized I'd been holding everything inside for too long, pretending I was okay. Now I was finally allowing myself to process everything. Eventually, I started to see a silver lining. I was becoming stronger, more aware of who I was and what I deserved. I learned that I don't need someone like Lisa in my life, someone who lies, cheats, and manipulates. My priority now was my kids, my own well-being, and rebuilding trust in myself. I knew I'd be okay, even if it felt like the world was falling apart at times. I had to keep going, step by step, day by day. Looking back, I realize how much I've grown from this nightmare. I learned that betrayal cuts deep, but it also reveals who you really are: resilient, capable, and determined to find a way out of the darkness. I'm not perfect and I still have scars, but I'm moving forward. And someday I'll look back at this chapter and know I survived it. That's all I can ask for now. Now, sitting here months after everything fell apart, I can finally breathe a little easier. The court's decisions, the legal battles, the betrayal, all of it left scars, but it also taught me a lot about myself. I've come to realize that trust, once broken like that, isn't easily repaired. But I also learned that I don't need someone who manipulates, lies, and cheats to be happy. I've started rebuilding my life, piece by piece, and I'm doing it on my own terms. The biggest lesson I've taken from this ordeal is that honesty and integrity matter more than anything. Lisa's betrayal was a wake-up call, one that made me see how fragile trust really is, and how dangerous greed and selfishness can be. I used to think marriage was about sharing everything, but I've learned that it's also about respect and honesty. Without those, everything crumbles. I also realized I'd allowed her to manipulate me for too long. I was so eager to keep the peace, to be the good husband, that I ignored the signs. I won't make that mistake again. Moving forward, I vow to be more vigilant, more honest with myself about what I want and need. I want my kids to grow up in a world where honesty is valued, and I want to set that example for them. Looking back, I see how this dark chapter forced me to confront my own strength. I found resilience I didn't know I had. I learned to stand up for myself, to fight for what's right, even when it's painful. The betrayal was brutal, but it also sparked a transformation, one that's made me more aware of my worth. To anyone out there going through something similar, trust me, you're not alone. It hurts, it's unfair, and it feels like the end of the world. But it's not. You will get through it. Take care of yourself, lean on your friends, and don't be afraid to seek help. The pain will fade, and someday, you'll look back and see this as the beginning of a new chapter. One where you're stronger, wiser, and more in control. As for me, I'm slowly rebuilding. I've started dating again, cautiously but with more honesty about what I want from a partner. I've learned to value myself more, to set boundaries, and to never ignore the warning signs again. My kids are healing, and I'm determined to give them a better life, one built on truth, respect, and genuine love. So that's my story. It's been a hell of a ride, but I've come out the other side. I hope my experience can serve as a reminder. Even in our darkest moments, there's a flicker of hope, and with time, patience, and a little courage, you can find your way back. I did.